Well, the Festival of Homiletics, I was scheduled to fly to Minneapolis to speak to you in person, but then I had on April the 19th a sudden emergency, evidently life-saving surgery, and I was hospitalized until the day before yesterday, 15 days. And my doctor said, "You ain't going to Minneapolis, right?" So I'm recording for you. Thanks for watching. And being in the hospital and having emergency surgery, it's been sort of a laboratory in what our topic is for this festival, namely hope, right? In a situation, I'd never been hospitalized. I've always been fit. So, what is hope? I noticed when my son would come to visit, he'd take my hand and he would say, "Dad, you're going to be great. You're going to be just fine. No matter how down I was, you're going to be fine." It's sort of, is hope cheerleading? I thought about my church members. I started getting texts the day after surgery. "You're home now, right? I hope you have a quick recovery," right? So is hope sort of the belief that things will get better quick, the way we hope that they will? Is that what it is? I had an amazing, illuminating moment in the hospital. My worst night, a new nurse came in that I hadn't seen before. His name was Martin. And he said, "Hi, my name's Martin. How you doing?" And I said, "I'll be honest with you. I'm in despair." I said, "This is my worst night." He said, "Why are you in despair?" I said, I feel like I'm not getting better. I feel like I will never get better." This is so funny. He looked at me and he said, "You'll get better." And I said, "Is that a promise?" And he said, "No, it's medicine." So I want to ponder that a little bit. Now, before all this happened, I was writing this lecture on hope, and I got stuck on Kate Bowler, her wonderful book, No Cure for Being Human, which is just absolutely fabulous. I love it. She has a moment in there where she says the following about hope. "Hope for the future feels like a kind of arsenic that needs to be carefully administered, or it can poison the sacred work of living in the present." Hope for the future feels like a kind of arsenic that needs to be carefully administered. I want to think about that, right? Hope is important. It's huge. It's everything. At the end of 1 Corinthians 13, Paul says, "And now remain faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is," I want him to say hope. I hope it at least was a close second to love, right? It's a big deal. One of our pandemic learnings as a church is people resonated to the word hope like no other. We had a capital campaign during the pandemic. We called it Hope is Here. We're building a building right now. It's called the Hope Center. Hope is such a big deal. And we had to really talk to ourselves as a staff over and over during the pandemic, never to talk about going back. Church people kept saying, "Oh, we want to go back. We want to go back." No, we're only going to talk about what God is calling us to going forward. Although the back matters, if we have confidence to go forward in God, it's because of something that has happened in the past. During the pandemic, I got a great podcast. I have a podcast called Maybe I'm Amazed, and I got Walter Brueggemann on there. And he's amazing. And he was in a chipper, gleeful mood. We just absolutely had a blast. And in this, he started referring, is Brueggemann, right? He started referring to Karl Barth's Church Dogmatics, Volume 1, Part 2. And in this, sort of his summary of Barth is the following. If we begin with what is possible, that is, if we reduce reality to the requirements of modern reason, then we're going to be very limited. But if we begin with the reality of faith and the freedom of God, then the possible gets opened up. We begin with the gospel realities of creation and resurrection, and then the possible isn't just what we can do, but it's what God might do. I love all that. That's why moralism in preaching is wrong. When you have moralistic sermons, say, "Well, you better do this," we're just limiting ourselves to what people are capable of doing. It's why there are churches, and like in my denomination, I'm a United Methodist, you want to hide somewhere, where we have so many churches, they think they are supposed to be the world's moral police. Nobody's asking them to be the moral police. But if you're the moral police, you're reducing everything to what people can do. Not all that great, right? So hope, is that a thing that we always have? Emily Dickinson said, hope is the thing in the soul with feathers that never stops the sun. That a thing? We always have hope. When Martin said to me, it's not my promise, but it's medicine. I thought about that. He trusts not in himself or in me, but he trusts in medicine. Psalm 42 says, why are you cast down, O my soul? Hope in God. Not be hopeful, but hope in God. Hope in God. So Kate Bowler's idea that we can have too much hope, right? It needs to be applied like arsenic. I live in North Carolina. There's a big news story here 25 or 30 years ago. There's one in the news named Blanche Moore. And Blanche is absolutely amazing. She, back in the 80s, she slowly gave arsenic poison to her boyfriend, probably to her father, her mother-in-law, and her first husband too, and killed them. A big court case, a lot of news, fabulous stuff, right? I wondered if some of us clergy might have been slowly killing the church by giving them too much hope, or the wrong kind of hope. I also got a podcast with Tim Rice, the lyricist for Jesus Christ Superstar. I love the way the whole musical begins. Judas is getting frustrated with Jesus, and he sings, "You've begun to matter more than the things you say." Brilliant. But then he says, all your followers are blind, too much heaven on their minds. I mean, there's that great line, I think it goes back to Oliver Wendell Holmes, who wrote, some people are so heavenly minded that they are of no earthly good. You may know that, though, actually through Johnny Cash's lyric from 1977. I mean, hope can be a kind of stall tactic. Hope can be a kind of, let's stay on the sidelines. Hope can be a way to numb those who lived in oppressed countries. It can be, it was used for slavery in America. It's just, the sweet, by and by, let's don't work to change anything now. And a lot of chatter about heaven. I wonder if we overdo this as clergy. I think small doses carefully administered. I sat with the widow of one of my employees once, my maintenance guy, who died far too young, and I'm sitting with her at his funeral, and the pastor did that, stupid fork thing. Like, the guy was buried with a fork in the casket. Why the dessert is yet? It was just so, it's wrong kind of hope, right? But I was sitting next to her, he did the fork thing. She leaned over to me and she said, damned fork. She said, I wanted him here with me. I did too, damned fork. So my thinking on all of this actually changed one day. Let's tell this story. I published it in Christian Century at some point, and it's appeared a couple of times in my preaching blog, which is called James Howell's Weekly Preaching Notions, which is a fun thing you can subscribe to. One Friday morning, it was my day off, I got a phone call from a chaplain at the hospital that I knew, and I answered the phone, and she just said, come here now. Come here now. I trusted her, so I got in my car and I went to the hospital. And when I got there, I encountered this family whose infant child I had just baptized 3 or 4 weeks before. And it was dire indeed. And they'd just been told that their daughter had a malignant tumor that was wrapped around her spinal cord at the base of her brain. She might not survive the day, but that they had to go to Duke Medical Center, which is about 2 hours away from where they were. They said, you need to go to Duke Medical Center now. So they put her in an ambulance, and the parents followed in their car, and I followed in my car. And we made the drive all the way to Durham. And we got there, and I found the family, of course, and it was just numbing. And I found that I had nothing. I had no words. I had no clever prayers. I was just kind of sitting on the floor crying, feeling pretty useless as a pastor. I mean, I love this family. What did I have to give them? They had some family friend who was a chaplain somewhere in the area who came by. And man, she was in a different mood. She came in the room, she was smiling. She took their hands and she said, I know God will heal your daughter. I know God will heal your daughter. And part of me thought, I wish I could be her. And part of me thought, thank God I'm not her. And she left, but I still felt utterly useless. I could criticize her, but I wasn't doing any good. Then the doctor came in, and I wished I'd gone to med school instead of div school, because he had a plan, he had a strategy, and that was great. And I just thought, why am I a minister? Like, I could pray over people's, like knee replacements, and they're so grateful for my prayers, but that's kind of nothing. Here's somebody really in need. What do I have to offer? I remember thinking about quitting. I was actually getting ready to go home. I thought, I'm just no use here. So I went to the family to say goodbye. And the parents looked at me and said, could you do something for us? I hadn't done anything yet, but I said, anything. They said, we're exhausted. Caroline's been crying for 3 straight days, and we got surgery tomorrow, and we have to get some rest. We just have to get some rest. Could you hold her for us while we get some rest? I said, yeah, I can do that. So they handed me this precious child, and I sat in a rocking chair, and I held her. I rocked her. She cried for a while, and finally she settled down and went to sleep. It occurred to me, when I left div school, I thought, I'm going to be John Chrysostom. I'm going to be Walter Brueggemann. I don't know who I was going to be. Something great. But then it seemed that like all of my training, all of my life experience, everything actually had been preparing me not to be Walter Brueggemann, but for this moment, to help that family, to hold this child. So how does hope work in there? I think that pastor that came in and said, oh, your daughter is going to be fine. As I think about it in retrospect, I'm not sure she had great hope. I think what I saw in her was a kind of pastoral vanity, right? She needed to be that kind of pastor, her own vanity. It was her own professional wishful thinking. Maybe it's her own unprofessional wishful thinking. Do people really need that from their pastor? There's also always the peril of BS, bullshit. Harry Frankfurt, philosopher at Princeton, wrote a beautiful book. I used to use it in my preaching classes when I taught. Short, brilliant book called Bullshit. And he analyzes bullshit as a phenomenon in our culture, where what's interesting about bullshit is you ask, does the bullshitter tell the truth or not? The bullshitter could care less. The bullshitter is just trying to talk you into whatever he's trying to talk you into. Truth is just beside the point. I'll say anything to get you to do what I want. And this is the great danger in preaching, right? Is that I'll say whatever they want to say. People have BS receptacles in their minds. They're used to hearing BS, but they're actually fond of BS. If you say what they want to hear, then you will be much beloved. They giddily buy in. So in preaching about hope and it being a pastor around hope, I think it's very important to try to avoid jargon and formulaic stuff. It's no time to be parroting verbiage. Here's what they probably want to hear about hope. Here's what I think I would want to hear about hope. And there's also the inner question of clergy and their own hopefulness. Some of the most hopeless people I've ever known are clergy. And it's fine to be aspirational. We talk about a hope that as we talk about it, we try to live into it. We try to reach up for it. You don't have to be sure of absolutely everything before you tell people. So how do we do that? How do we work on that? So on hope, I think there can be clearly, with Kate Bowler's arsenic idea, there could be too much hope. Or maybe there could just be a wrong kind of hope. It's a little bit like fear. Scott Bader Say wrote about a book about Jesus and fear, and he said, it's not like fear is a bad thing. If you're on the road and a truck is bearing down on you, you should be afraid and get out of the way. But then there's so much bad fear, so much irrational fear that's absolutely crippling, right? So is there good hope? Is there bad hope? So some instances of confusions of hope. You have optimism. I love it. Martin Luther King, late in his life, said, I'm no longer optimistic, but I remain hopeful. Right? Optimism is the idea that things are going to get better tomorrow. If we just get our act together, everything's going to be great. Hope is better than that. Hope can bear it if things get worse tomorrow. So hope. And optimism depends on us getting our act together. Hope depends on God, on larger forces beyond ourselves. Some people associate hope with answered prayers. Well, so many people have been praying for me. I'm so grateful for that. Answered prayer, is that what hope is about? If we hope, we pray, God answers the prayer. We hope God will answer the prayer. Garth Brooks, thank God for unanswered. That all gets confusing, right? I passed a billboard the other day, the day after I got out of the hospital. The big billboard that said, "Pray for America." To me, that seems just so hopeless, right? Because America then is the ultimate good, but we want to use God for the ultimate good. Hope's got to be somehow in God, not in these lesser realities. And then there's this. We mix up hope with comfort. We mix up hope with comfort. What I hope for is comfort. If I ask my church people, what do you want to hear in my sermons? They say, oh, we want comfort. Why do you come to church? Oh, we want comfort. I try to give them some comfort. When I was in the hospital, I needed some comfort, felt like crap, right? But I stumbled on a couple things. Let me read these to you. Karl Barth, this is amazing. Barth, the world's most brilliant theologian, he lives there in Basel, and every year on Christmas, he's got a passel of children in his house. They would get up and they'd open their presents. Excuse me. And then he would go to the local prison and preach to the prisoners there. In one of those sermons, he wrote this: comfort is not the equivalent of hope in God. Rather, we seek comfort as long as we fail to realize we may hope in God. Do you hear that? We seek comfort as long as we fail to realize we may hope in God. To seek comfort is a substitute. I need more than comfort. I need help. I need redemption. Then a while back, I learned about a martyr from World War II named Mother Maria of Paris. She's a saint now. She's from Latvia. She went to Paris. She sheltered Jewish children during the war. Here's one of the things that she said. It would be a great lie to tell those who are searching, go to church because there you will find peace. The opposite is true. The church tells those who are at peace and asleep, go to church because there you will find real anguish for your sin and the world's sin. There you will feel an insatiable hunger for Christ's truth. There, instead of becoming lukewarm, you'll be set on fire. Instead of being pacified, you'll become alarmed. Instead of learning the wisdom of this world, you will become fools for Christ. So hope isn't comfort. Hope is, sometimes we get hope confused, even the clergy, but certainly the laity do. How do we help with this? With, how to put it, self-indulgence, self-glorification. Somebody I know here in Charlotte died recently, and I read the obituary, and it's just absolutely remarkable. Okay, here's what it says. Let me read this to you. X, the person's name, was welcomed home on the date with shouts of adulation and triumphant celebrations as he entered the gates of heaven, embraced in the loving arms of his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Part of me admires that, and part of me thinks, like, they're so happy to have him in heaven, because the rest of the obituary was a long litany of his many great achievements in this world. But there can't be hope that your great achievements in this world will be one day crowned by shouts of adulation as you enter heaven. Is that a thing? Hope can become self-indulgent and pathological, or even idolatrous. James K.A. Smith says this: our idolatries are less like conscious decisions to believe a falsehood and more like learned dispositions to hope in what will disappoint. Ouch. We have learned dispositions to hope in what will disappoint. Sometimes hope becomes too narrowly Christian. Like, hope isn't just for Christians. It's got to be the hope of the world. God is the hope of the world. I've told a number of people over the years, great story from Martin Buber, the Jewish philosopher. He was in New York City giving a lecture to a group of Catholic priests. At the end of the lecture, he said, you guys believe the Messiah has come and is coming back. We believe he hasn't come yet, but that he is coming. He said, I propose that we wait for him together. I like that. And he said, and when he shows up, Someone will ask him, were you here before? And he said, I hope to God I'll be close enough for him to whisper in his ear and say, for the love of God, don't answer. Right? We're all hoping in God. Hope can't just be for people who think a certain thing or have a certain creed and so on. So let me try to wind this up. I wonder if there's a way to hold a bold vision. There's plenty of that in Scripture about hope, with modest, simple hope, with humility, with reality. So let me suggest 3 items in closing. One is when I try to talk about hope, I try to do so modestly. I think about the arsenic being carefully administered. And I think about moments where, the guy that died and the pastor did the fork thing. I was with him when the doctor first gave him his diagnosis. And I'll never forget it. The doctor said, Jim, you have a 20% chance of making it. Well, what's 20%, right? Is that a good number? Low number? It's a number. What the doctor gave him was a chance. When Caroline was at Duke Medical Center, the doctor did not come out like the chaplain and say, I'm going to heal your child and she'll grow up and be fine. The doctor said, here's what we're going to do. He gave them a chance. They had no chance that morning. He gave them a chance. I wonder if even robust theological Christian hope is helping people believe there's maybe. Everything we hope for is not going to come. Every dream that we have, however godly the dream, isn't going to come. Maybe God wants us to cling to the maybe. I think about the Cappadocian fathers. Theirs wasn't knowledge of God that they had contained. Theirs was a yearning for God, and everything that they yearned for is kind of, maybe, we don't know. And they would learn something about God, but it would create more things that they didn't know about God. It was that constant quest upward. I wonder if that's a thing. It's a lot like curiosity, isn't it? I mean, I wonder if hope is the same as curiosity. Maybe hope is more like curiosity than certainty. A very dear friend years ago named Claude Broach, a retired Baptist pastor, and he got a diagnosis that he was going to be dead soon. So I went by to see him. His family was there. And they were doing what families do in such situations. They were evading the reality. We're talking, laughing. It's great. And I sat there for a while, and then finally I cut into it, and I said, Claude, how do you feel about dying? He paused, and he thought, he was such a wise man. He paused, and he thought, and he said, I am curious. I'm sorry, that's just the most hopeful thing I think I've ever heard. At the end of his life, not, I know I'll be welcomed with shouts of, he said, I'm curious. Like, I want to know what's coming. It's a lovely thing. The maybe. Here's the second thing about hope. Recently, I read Joseph O'Connor's really lovely novel called My Father's House, set in World War II, about protecting Jewish refugees in Rome during the war. One of the characters is the Contessa Giovanni Landini. And Giovanna Landini, she is a woman who has much, and she has lost more. So she goes to her priest one day, and she tells him about the season in her life when she had given up. She had no hope. She wished she were not here. And that what changed it was one friendship with someone that absolutely changed everything. So here's what she writes. I love this. You don't understand the fact that hope, if it is ever encountered, is in the small things of the everyday. Not an announcement from on high. It's in the aroma of cooking, a phrase from Vivaldi, a hand clasp, a conversation. That is what happened to me in the gardens of the Via Umberto that day. Entering the park, I didn't know him. Leaving it, I had shaken hands with the greatest friend of my life, who in those terrible months would give me purpose, a reason to go on living. And we're calling our new church building here the Hope Center. Every church should be a Hope Center. I don't think that means that we say, oh, you're going to heaven, everything will be fine, take the fork with you when you go. The Hope Center is we become that friend that somebody hasn't had, and because we are their friend, they think about carrying on. So then that's the third thing. preaching about hope is that it's always personal. It's always personal. It's personal with God and it's personal with other people. I've talked to my people many times. When we use the verb pray, we always add the preposition for. I'm going to pray for. I'm going to pray for. And what I challenge my folks always to do is just pray. Leave off the for. Right? Just pray. My mother-in-law was a great prayer. I think she prayed for a great many things, but she just would get up every morning and she had her time with God. She called it her lap time. She imagined herself curling up in her Heavenly Father's lap, right? I wonder if that applies to hope. We think, I hope for, but maybe we just hope. And if there's hope like that, it has to do with the relationship. It has to do with who's there. I mean, the older people know this. What do they hope for at the end of the day? If you find an 83-year-old and if you say, give me your Christmas list, what do you want Santa to bring you for Christmas? If they got a long list, something's really wrong with this person, right? Most 83-year-olds I know, if you say, what do you want for Christmas? They say, I want my daughter to be here with me. I want my son to be here with me. That's what they hope for. So then hope is not so much the outcome, but hope is with whom you move toward whatever the outcome might be. All stories of hope, as best I can tell, they involve people. They're never solo. They're part of community. I'll close with this. Father Greg Boyle, what a great talker. What a purveyor of hope this guy is, right? He goes to California and he has this great ministry, Homeboy Industries, former gang members. And it's a story he's told many times, and I love it. He always takes a homie with him to give a talk. And he took one named Mario. He said, Mario is the most tattooed guy in our entire program. When I walk down the street with Mario, mothers hide their children from him. He said, but if they knew Mario, if they knew our program, they could ask anybody in our program, who's the most compassionate, who is the kindest person, who's the most delightful person in our program? They would all say, oh, it's Mario. It's Mario. So Father Boyle went to give a lecture at his alma mater, Gonzaga, and he took Mario with him, and they both shared in giving the talk and went well. And then at the end, there was time for Q&A. So the first question, a woman goes to the mic, and she directs her question to Mario. And she says, Mario, you're a father. You have children, what are they, 14, 16 years old? She said, what advice do you have for your children? And Mario struggled to speak. And he said, he couldn't get it out. Finally, he got it out. He said, I just don't want them to turn out like me. There's dead silence in the room. And the woman who'd asked the question responded. She said, why wouldn't you want them to turn out like you? You were good. You were wise. You were compassionate. You were caring. And the whole crowd, 1,000 people, stood and applauded. That's hope, right? That's hope. It's not a fork. It's not bloated language. It's not formulaic stuff. It's not parroting anything. That is hope. Real relationships, people sharing in God's life together, looking for hope, looking for change. Friends, thank you for spending this time with me to talk about hope. Let's not overdo it. It's like arsenic. You got to administer it carefully. We can get wrong hope. We can get misguided hope. But hope, in small doses, can be such a beautiful thing. Thanks be to God.